In a college football season with athletes like Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Drake May, Quinn Ewers, who would have thought that we'd be talking about Michael Penix Jr. as the Heisman favorite 6 weeks in? For the first time in what feels like forever, the college football world revolves around the Washington Huskies and their quarterback. And I mean, why not? They're 6-0, they're the 5th ranked team in the country, coming off the biggest win of the season to the Oregon Ducks. It feels like this team has all the makings to be a college football playoff contender. And the tip of the spear, Michael Penix Jr. is putting up video game numbers 6 games into the season. He has a 72% completion percentage. He's second in all of college football in yards with just over 2,300. He's top 5 in passing yards, and he's number 1 in the country in yards per game. Let me put this in perspective for you guys real quick. In the entire history of college football, no Washington Husky has ever won the Heisman Trophy. And to take it a step further, none has even finished in the top 3 in voting. That just goes to show just how special of a season Michael Penix Jr. is having. Mind you, this is a guy who's been playing college football for 6 years. His story is filled with resilience and perseverance at the highest possible level. His freshman season, he suffered a torn ACL in his right knee and then proceeded to tear that same ACL in 2020. Oh yeah, and in between those 2 seasons, he suffered a broken clavicle that forced him to miss the second half of his sophomore year. Now you know how the old saying goes, we're not defined by our losses, we're defined by how we respond to them, right? But I don't think anyone in their right mind would have judged Michael Penix Jr. if he quit right then and there, because that's 3 straight injuries in a row that just feel like they're never ending, especially the torn ACL in the same knee 2 years apart. But like I said, we are ultimately defined by how we respond to those losses, right? And I think that the way that Michael Penix Jr. has responded to those losses speaks volumes to his character. Athletes like Michael are ultimately why I made this channel. I'm a true believer that perseverance and that resiliency has a butterfly effect down to anyone who hears this story to hopefully imply those same principles into their own lives through their own struggles. Obviously, what Michael does on that field is flat out special, and I'm not trying to take away from that at all. We'll definitely get into that in a second, but I'm a true believer that his everlasting legacy goes beyond what he does on that field because of how he responded to those initial situations that would have made 99% of people quit. And I hope that inspires you guys to do the same in your own lives. Now let's move on from that, because I want to talk about what he can do on that field, because that dude can flat out ball. With him being a lefty, sometimes the ball looks a bit awkward coming out of his hand, but the accuracy, the strength, and the touch all together are a thing of beauty. Let's make one thing clear, you don't get 72% completion percentage unless you're dropping absolute dimes. The sheer audacity of some of his throws are insane, yet somehow he makes it look so easy, as if you were playing rookie mode on Madden. He's possibly the very best deep ball thrower in the entire country, and if not, he definitely belongs in that conversation. The ball just flies out of his hands so effortlessly, and the accuracy is lethal. Even the throws that may seem like they're in bad spots still land exactly where they're supposed to. He might not hit a guy perfectly in stride, but he will put it in a spot where only his guy can get it. Also, through watching him, I've realized that he loves throwing the ball outside of the numbers. And for those of you that don't know, the throws outside of the numbers are some of the hardest in football. Just a guy who has a cannon of a left arm with absolutely underrated accuracy. Going into week 6 versus a historically tough Oregon Ducks team, this was his opportunity to put himself on the map and solidify all the Heisman hype. And when the lights shine the brightest, he showed out. He went 22 for 37 with 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. This was a classic quarterback duel versus another Heisman candidate in Bo Nix, with both combining for 639 yards and 6 touchdowns. Down 33-29 in the 4th quarter with about 3 minutes left, dealing with severe cramps throughout the entirety of the 4th quarter.
And the guy's cramping up. I mean, cramping, but you know, the entire 4th quarter and even before that probably. And I mean, you probably can see it. I mean, he's just hunched over, you know, just trying to get a snap, and even some of the play calls might have even been affected as far as the tempo and rhythm, just to let him catch his wind.
College Game Day was there, so you know that means that everyone in the college football world is watching and waiting to see how you respond, waiting to see if you're really worthy of that Heisman hype. Yet he's really out here freestyling right before he goes out onto that field. That is a crazy level of confidence. I don't know if this throw here seems easy, but trust me, it is not. The window is not as open as it may seem with the safety right over top. The decision to throw that ball only amplifies that level of confidence that he was showing right before he went out onto that field. And last, but of course not least, the game-winning throw.
Launching for the end zone, forget being patient. Odunze! And Washington takes the lead.
Leading the Huskies to what feels like their biggest win in the last decade. He just has this massively calm swag about him at all times. He never seems overwhelmed by what's going on around him, and I'm sure that that comes from the years of experience that he's had in college football. Him and Coach Kalen DeBoer have a beautiful relationship going back to Indiana, and they both seem to bring out the absolute best in each other. They're just clicking on all cylinders right now like a high-powered machine. And I can't believe it took me this long to praise the wide receiver core because it is one of the best in the country. From Rome Odunze to Jalen Polk to Jalen McMillan, I promise you will see all three of these guys playing on Sundays. Like I said earlier, this team has all the makings of a potential college football playoff contender, so take note if you haven't yet. We're really going to find out what this Washington team is made of through the last 4 games of their season. They have USC, Utah, Oregon State, and Washington State. None of those teams are an easy win at all. Now, I know that I mentioned that some of his legacy is already cemented for how he's responded to his trials and tribulations, but if he wants to be remembered as an all-time college football legend, as a Heisman Trophy winner, it all comes down to how he closes out the second half of this schedule, because it will not be easy going forward. But count me in as someone who's not about to bet against a guy who exemplifies resiliency at the highest possible level, and you'd be smart not to as well. Michael Penix Jr. is an athlete with a one-of-a-kind mentality with the potential to be remembered as a one-of-a-kind player.